The Kevin Durant trade saga for offseason 2022 is apparently over. Kevin Durant, alongside his business partner, Rich Kleiman, met with Brooklyn Nets owner Joe Tsai, head coach Steve Nash, and general manager Sean Marks. It was Sean to deliver the statement on Twitter earlier in the day that KD would be returning to Brooklyn to kick off next season. Statement pretty much said they met in Los Angeles on Monday. They have agreed to move forward with their partnership. They're focusing on basketball with one collective goal in mind: to build a lasting franchise to bring a championship to Brooklyn. Durant trade demand started on June 30th. That's when it was at least released to the public. Reporters started to get the intel on why KD wanted out, or why they believe Kevin Durant wanted out. Honestly, it's still pretty confusing for me, even somebody that follows the game of basketball closely. If somebody asks me, why did Kevin Durant want a trade in 2022, let's say 3, 5, 10 years from now, I think I would tell them this. In my heart of hearts, I believe Kevin Durant was genuinely frustrated with Kyrie Irving. But what have we seen from KD in his previous 2 stops in his career, his only other 2 stops in his professional career? When he was in Golden State, apparently he was not seeing eye to eye with Draymond Green. Remember the Clippers game where Green apparently called KD the B word? I think that was the beginning of the end of KD's time in Golden State, if not before that. Kevin Durant ended up leaving Golden State to go to Brooklyn. Before that, apparently Kevin Durant was not seeing eye to eye to Russell Westbrook. Our evidence of that is the burner account that Kevin Durant seemingly was caught tweeting from, in which he was pretty down on Russell Westbrook and head coach at the time, Scott Brooks. So what have we learned from KD? He seemingly, like most athletes of today, have problems with communicating with teammates. And what I mean by most athletes of today, if you ever watched a basketball game, any game, you can just pick one throughout the season, more times than not, you see players aggressively frustrated with referees. Do refs make mistakes on calls throughout games? I'm sure they do. They're human, right? But I believe, and I've believed this for a long time, that really players are mad at other players for how they're playing. But we live in this world, and to be fair to athletes, I'm sure it's a very thin line. We live in this world where people don't hold others accountable, right? There's no hierarchy oftentimes, even when guys make more money and clearly are better than other players. We see players going at refs because they're frustrated and or intimidated to go at the players that are really making the mistakes versus the refs, right? So I think this kind of translated off the court for Kevin Durant. In theory, I believe he's really frustrated with Kyrie Irving. The COVID vaccination mandate, Kyrie wouldn't get vaccinated. It cost the Nets seeding in the Eastern Conference, which led to them playing the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. Who knows? If the Brooklyn Nets are a higher seed, maybe Ben Simmons is eligible to play against the Boston Celtics, which clearly was a bad matchup for Brooklyn because they got swept by Boston. Maybe later in the postseason, Ben would have been available for a Celtics-Nets matchup, and maybe he could have been a big factor, at least defensively, for the Nets. Or I could take it a step further. Maybe, just maybe, if Kyrie gets vaccinated, you never lose James Harden in the first place. A lot of people believe if Harden were healthy and Kyrie were healthy and KD were healthy, the Nets would have easily gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, if not the NBA Finals. Let's keep in mind Kevin Durant pretty much carried the Nets past the champions last year, Milwaukee, by himself in the second round of the playoffs. Harden was on one leg. Kyrie couldn't finish the series. So I think KD is really deep down frustrated with Kyrie, but didn't know how to properly communicate that with his guy, his mans. They're clearly friends, but it clearly seems like Kyrie is the more dominant personality of the two. They both seem lost, but Kyrie seems to be more comfortable in loss than KD does, if that makes any sense at all. I tried my best. I'm damn near lost explaining this to you. Kevin Durant tried to get traded, and he got humbled by the market. That's the reality of what happened. Kevin Durant now knows what his market is in the NBA today. I'm not mad at the brother for trying to go out there and get something new. he tried to sneak into Miami or Phoenix, and because of the Ben Simmons contract, it pretty much null and voided both of those opportunities because you can't have Bam Adebayo, and at the time you couldn't have DeAndre Ayton on the Brooklyn Nets team without trading Ben Simmons away. So whatever the plan was with Rich Kleiman, KD's manager, and himself, it was not a good one. Every step of the way, the Brooklyn Nets stood pat. They held their ground. They did their due diligence. They shopped KD, and they did not like the offers that they have for a player of Durant's caliber. I think I will also incorporate, whenever I do explain what happened with KD in 2022, I will also incorporate that Rudy Gobert trade, which did make things more complicated for a Brooklyn Nets Kevin Durant trade, just because Minnesota, they traded a haul to Utah to get Gobert. So I think that's a piece to the puzzle as well. But I do think a big part of it is KD did not have a real plan. He had leverage a couple times this offseason. I think originally when Kyrie Irving was kind of out there with the extension, right before KD demanded out, in theory, KD could have had some leverage if Kyrie would have left Brooklyn, if he would have been stern and wanted to leave Brooklyn. But at some point in the offseason, Kyrie said, I want to stay in Brooklyn because he shopped himself, and that wasn't a great market for him. And then when you look at KD, he went and called the coach out. He called the general manager out. He apparently wanted both of those gentlemen fired. That didn't work, okay? He thought he had leverage from that, but the owner said, nope, I'm riding with the owner and GM. So KD lost leverage. And then the last time, which I told you guys about a week or two ago, this was it. Kevin Durant lost all the leverage he had. When that retirement rumor got out in the atmosphere and KD went on Twitter and tweeted, I'm not retiring, I said, what are you doing? That was your leverage, because that was the one move that the Brooklyn Nets couldn't have accounted for. What if Durant just says, I'm done with basketball and retires because he wants to be traded from Brooklyn that bad? At that point, I believe the Nets would have had no choice but to take the best of the offers that were available to them. But KD said, nah, I'm a hooper. I'm coming back regardless. And the Nets are like, okay, if we know he's going to ball next year, he ain't retiring. He already put it out in the atmosphere. He looked ridiculously weak now if he retired after saying he wasn't going to retire. We know we got him at least going to touch the court for us. So Kevin Durant gave up all his leverage. I want to believe if LeBron James or Steph Curry, in a similar situation as KD was this offseason, if they demanded a trade out, they would have thought through every step of the way. Every little nuanced detail would have thought through every Brooklyn Nets move. You know Rich Paul would have did it. And I want to believe those gentlemen, if they desired this, would have gotten traded. But guys of that magnitude rarely demand trades. Ironically, the last time a guy of this magnitude demanded a trade with multiple years left on his contract was a gentleman, happy born day, God rest his dead, was Kobe Bryant. Ironically, on the day that Kobe Bryant would have celebrated his 44th birthday, it's Kevin Durant pulling a Kobe move, and after weighing his options, says, I'm coming back to Brooklyn. Kobe said he was going back to L.A. after the Dallas Mavericks got close to pulling off the Kobe trade for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not sure if they ever got that close to pulling off a KD trade, but for what it's worth, Durant will be back in Brooklyn to kick off Nets season, presumably, because we never really know with KD or Kyrie and the Brooklyn Nets, to be real with you guys. But a whole lot of nothing this offseason. Just a lot of content for basketball blogs, to be real with y'all. A whole lot of nothing happened between KD and the Brooklyn Nets as it looks like cooler heads prevailed. And to be fair, it's a really good team in Brooklyn that they're bringing back next year, to be real with you guys. They should be really good. Made some nice acquisitions this offseason. I like Royce O'Neal a lot. I like TJ Warren, especially when you get half a bubble TJ Warren for Brooklyn next year. It's a good team next year, by the way. They can go pick up a couple pieces here as now free agency can continue with Kevin Durant going back to Brooklyn next year. But yeah, a whole bunch of nothing. Durant returns to Brooklyn. He finds out that the market maybe wasn't as good as he thought it was for a player of his magnitude.